Well, hello and welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Your Blank What Now podcast. I am your host, Marci Nettles. I am so excited to be able to bring these amazing stories to you every single week of people that have gone through really difficult times in their life, but then they made decisions, they made choices, and just did something different to be able to make that breakthrough move. And so I'm really excited today because my guest is actually here in studio with me. So I'm super excited for all of you to be able to meet. She's actually very near and dear to me. She is my daughter-in-law. This is Abbey Walters. She is actually a wife, a mother of three, which happen to be my amazing three grandkids. And she has been a fraud investigator for over 10 years now. Well, Abbey has got a phenomenal redemption story that she really wants to share with all of you. And so when she came to me and asked if I could help, I was beyond thrilled to be able to say yes and to be able to have Abbey here with me on the show today. So welcome, Abbey. I am so glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here. I'm nervous, but I'm here.
That's okay. Well, and I'm going to give you a little coaching tips to speak up nice and loud because if you're going to share the story, you want to broadcast it, right?
Yes.
You want everybody to hear.
Everybody to hear it.
And I don't want to be like so much louder than you that they can't hear you. So let's talk loud.
Okay.
Okay. So together we came up with this thought for the title of your episode was You're Running from God.
Yes.
What now? Oh my goodness. So this is going to be a big story. It's a really important story for many people to hear because it's not only your story. A lot of people have been experiencing this for one reason or another. But before we get into that part of it, can you please share with the What Now tribe more about maybe who Abbey is and especially what was your life like in your single digit numbers? So when you were a little girl.
When I was okay, we're going back.
We're going way back.
Going way back. Well, I'm going back. We'll go pre-10.
Okay, good.
Go back from like 1 to 10. I was born and raised in California. I have two amazing parents who unfortunately divorced when I was like 17. But I think they did everything they could, right? Because my parents were teen parents. They had 4 children both before my parents were 25 years old. So they did what they could. So I grew up in California. We moved around a lot because my dad was in the Navy. So I'm a Navy brat. And I loved life as a little girl. I went to church every Sunday. My dad would make us go because he was brought up in the church. And I found this divine love for Jesus and for God. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, I want to be a missionary because I have one of my grandma's, one of her brothers was a missionary for a lot of years. He recently passed away a year ago, but he was a missionary to Thailand, Myanmar, Burma. And every time he would come home and tell me all these stories about going into the jungle and killing snakes and teaching people about Jesus. And I fell in love with that idea of going around the world and telling people about Jesus. And like as a little girl, that's what I really wanted to do. Like I fell in love with wanting to go to Japan and I wanted to be a missionary and spread the love of Jesus. But in that time when I was little, after we moved from California to Arizona, my parents lost their house in California, financial struggles, early 2000s. Thankfully left California before it got a little weird like it is now. Yeah. But we came here and that's when everything just kind of for me like changed.
Okay. So first of all, you said that your dad made you go to church. Was that tell me about dad making you go to church?
It definitely as a child, like in teen years, felt forced, like you have to do this, you have to go. This is our faith, this is what we believe. And it just was kind of like a norm every Sunday. And then as I got older, it was Sundays and Wednesdays and like getting in youth group and all that kind of stuff, like church camp every summer. And I wasn't seeing the return of the love of Jesus and the people in church. And that's where it was kind of like, it felt forced of like, well, I don't want to go around people who are not, being like Jesus. And, me and I have 3 older brothers. We all got kind of vocal about this with my dad and he got a little upset sometimes about it because he's like, no, you need to go, like, no rebellion. Like, one of the 10 commandments, honor thy mother and father. That was like a big one. Like, hey, you need to honor us by listening to us, go to church. But in that period of like going, I found my own love for Jesus.
Mm.
And I always held on to that in everything I did. So as a little girl and like even into adulthood, I caught myself all the time being like WWJD, like, what would Jesus do? And like certain acts of like being kind and loving when I needed to be like, okay, how would Jesus love people, even in the times I was away from him?
Wow, that's amazing. And there is such a big difference between going to church and having a personal relationship with Jesus. You kind of just broke it down a little bit there that it's like going to church or being part of a religion doesn't necessarily fill the needs that you have as a person, but having a personal relationship with Jesus is what you were really all about from the time you were a little girl.
Oh, yeah. No, that was like, I just loved the idea of someone being so gracious to die for everything I could ever do wrong in my life. And as a child, that didn't make full sense because in Sunday school and a lot of Christian churches, it's more like, okay, we're going to sing about songs. We're going to talk about like the old stories with Noah and Joseph and like when Jesus was born. But like, I think you really need to get into like the deep of it and like the blood of Jesus, why he died. And during that running from God, I didn't seek any of that. And now being back with him, I realize it is such more of a deep relationship. And that was something when I was a little girl, I was seeking so greatly, but I didn't have the right tools, the right people showing me the right way. So that's where the downfall fall came. And then again, when we moved to Arizona in 2000, that's when a lot of stuff changed for me because we came here. I lost all my friends, had no friends, go to a new school. I got made fun of every day. I I didn't want to go to school. I had two really good friends, my friend Josh and my friend James, that I could talk to every day about like wrestling and boy stuff because I was a big tomboy. I had three older brothers, like I said. I Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, Street Sharks. I embraced like those things more than girly things. And moving to a new state and you're like, oh, like girls want to be your friend, but then you're talking about like wrestling and like,
Not quite their
action
topics
figure.
of
Yeah.
interest. Yeah, no, that totally resonates with me too. Because when I was younger, I was totally that tomboy.
Mhm.
I was totally the one that was climbing the trees and just out exploring all of the time. I actually sometimes wonder if the environment that we're living in today, where kids are being, put into different situations because they are more masculine or than feminine, if that probably would have been me. Does it
Yeah.
sound like that probably would have been you too?
No, it definitely would have been me. There was times like I would go up to my mom and I'm like, okay, why am I not a boy like my brothers, But I'm just like, it's like, no, you're a girl. And it's like, okay, you're just different, but you're allowed to like the things of boys. And my parents were awesome at that, of just supporting me and always loving me no matter what. Of, oh, I want to learn how to skateboard like my big brother. I want to do this like my big brother, and they were always supportive, but like definitely defining the, hey, you're still a girl, you're a little bit different. There's certain things you can do that they can't do. They can do, you can't do because you are a girl. So it's just,
That's awesome. I love that you had that support and knowing your parents. They are amazing people. And like you said in the very beginning, they did the best that they knew how to do. And yet, even as parents, when we try to do the very best, things happen.
oh
And
yeah.
I know in your life, you've really had some negative experiences that created some problems within inside of you, as well as just thoughts and maybe beliefs you had about yourself. Can you share some of the hard things in your life? I mean, we had you share up until 10 for a reason, because at 10, some, trauma happened
Yeah.
for you. Can you share that?
Yeah. So again, when we moved to Arizona, it was probably about a year and a half after living here. Again, older brothers. So my brothers have a lot of male friends, and I distinctly,
It's okay.
but it helps. Um, there was always times like my brother's friends would come over, we'd all play. My parents worked full time. My dad had 2 jobs at one point, so they were never really home. We were raising ourselves. My brothers were raising me. And there was one distinct time when my brother's friends were over and we were playing hide and go seek, and we teamed up into pairs, but I teamed up with one of my brother's friends, and that was the first time I had ever been molested.
Mm.
And I thank God though, because something inside of me like stopped him from taking it further with me. And this is like one of the first times I'm sharing this in a long time. Like my parents don't even know about this. So this is I just, shame. I didn't want people to know about it. I was scared. And every time he would come back over to our house after that, I was scared of him. I didn't want him to come over, but I knew if I did tell my brothers, my brothers probably would have, they would have taken him out. They would have.
Probably.
And
And your brothers aren't little boys either.
No.
Your brothers are like 6'6",
Yeah.
6'7".
Yeah. My
big
tallest
men.
brother's 6'7.5". The other brother's 6'4". The other brother's 6'3.5". I'm 6 foot, almost 6'1". Like, we're not little people. And even as kids, like, my mom would joke, like when people are like, how are your kids so big? Oh, I feed a Miracle Grow. But
That's hilarious.
yeah,
That's a good one.
it is. It was a good response. I'm like, why are you feeding those plant food? Like, but yeah, it definitely started like a downhill of trusting people, trusting men, being around men. Why would someone do that to you? And then it started letting in those thoughts from the enemy of, well, God doesn't love you. That's why that happened to you. Like, God's not there for you. That's why he didn't protect you when that happened. So that's kind of when it started, this whole negative impact of like, okay, I still love God, I still love Jesus, but yeah, you weren't there for me. And that was kind of the downward spiral of the running.
Okay, so let's talk about that. And first of all, I completely understand the guilt that you feel when something happens to you, even though you're not responsible and you're not the one that did it. You feel so ashamed and so embarrassed. I had a similar situation. I was a little bit older. I was 13, and I didn't tell anybody until I was in my 30s. So I completely understand. And if there's anybody out there that's listening right now that had that type of trauma as a young child, whether you were a girl or a boy, because it happens for both boys and girls, just know that it was not your fault and that God did not do that for you to you, and
No.
he did not put you in that situation so that you would be hurt. People make bad decisions. They make bad choices because we're all human beings, right? But that's where Jesus comes in, and thank God for Jesus. But before we talk more about Jesus, tell us about that downward spiral and what happened in your life because of the way the enemy started talking to you. And when we talk about the enemy, we're talking about Satan. We're talking about the opposite of God. And so how did that progress in your life?
From there, it started into acting out like most kids do. It's the first sign of like sexual abuse. Any type of trauma is a rebellion, spect out. Within 3 years, that was at like 10, happened again at 11. By 13, I was drinking alcohol. I was smoking cigarettes. Um, into 8th grade, um, that's when I started going to raves for the first time. So I was a 13, 14-year-old little girl lying to my parents about where I was every Friday, Saturday night. And I was in the middle of the desert, downtown Phoenix. And it was like about like 14 years old is when I started using drugs heavily, right into high school. And I was just trying to do everything in my power to numb what happened to me as a child, the bullying I was dealing with at school, just the trying to people please. And just like I felt my whole life like I never fit in. No matter what friend group I had, I came out as bisexual. My parents lost it. I go into like that whole LGBT community. some of them accept me, a majority of them reject me. You know, I was getting rejected from my friends that because I was still going to church. And this was like a really big counteractor battle in me because at school, I went to two clubs. I went to the LGBT club, but then I also went to Christ Church on campus.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I was definitely in a very big battle of God, who is God. And I distinctly remember being in my kitchen one day having an argument with my dad about God and religion and all of it. And I finally looked at him and I was like, well, I don't believe God is who you say anymore. I'm like, God could be a six-armed cow. And the look on my dad's face, I'll never forget it because it was just utter heartbreak to hear that from, you know, your child. And my dad definitely lived by that verse. You know, if you bring up a child in the way they must go, they will never flee from it. And my dad was watching all of his children flee from it. And I was the last one at that point. And in that moment is when I just kind of like let go of like God. And I was like, okay, you know, you haven't shown up. And then it was a few years later, in 2007, my Nana passed away. And she was my best friend. And what was hard too is she was a minister of, I'm trying to think of the best way to put this because it's more of they had a title, but I can't remember the proper naming. But she would talk about all religions and the fundamental values in all religions and how they're very similar. They're very the same, the good core values from all of them. And I thought that was really interesting. So it just piqued my world religion interest through the roof. And when she passed away, that was the catalyst of my life of completely running from God. I said, F you, I don't want anything to do with you. How dare you take such a lovely, kind, sweet woman from this earth? Like you're not a good person. You're not good if you do that. And I just that was when everything worse happened in my life. The day I cursed him and said, I want nothing to do with you. And I'm going to leave you. I'm going to run from you. I'm going to go do my own thing. And that was a bad choice. It was a very bad choice. So,
You know, and it's interesting too, because when we run from God, He doesn't go anywhere.
No.
He stays there. He's always constant. He's
Uh-huh.
there for us. It is always us that does the running. So unless you like to like run for physical fitness, don't run.
No.
Don't run from
No.
God. Because like you said, as soon as you did that, once you made that decision after losing your Nana, which it can be so hard, especially for a child that has been so traumatized like you had been, and where she had been that rock for you and that friend where you had, as you mentioned, it's like you had been bullied and you had been just in really difficult situations. So to make the decision to run from God, like you said, it catalyzed into worse things. So share with us those worse things that happened in your life, Abby.
So shortly after my Nana, very sweet woman, she passed away September 11th, 2007. She always made a promise, I'm never going to travel on September 11th. I want to honor those who died on September 11th and respect them that day. And for whatever reason, she drove that day. And within 2 months, I found out I was pregnant at 16. Um, by my boyfriend at the time, who I lost my virginity to. I was holding on to that. I was deep down wanted to stay virgin till married. I was trying my hardest to do it because I was watching my friends not do it, and I was trying to be good, and no one's perfect.
No.
So I didn't have my Nana to run to, and my mom just again trying to do best she could. You know, being a mom, if you ever get pregnant, come in my house, you're gone, kind of thing. So I took that to heart. And during that time, I was trying to figure out what to do. My boyfriend at the time was like, well, we're not keeping it. So you got to figure that out. That was a very long thing. And I think the hardest thing that people don't understand is when you get to that place to make a decision to end a pregnancy with abortion, the amount of thought that some people do have to go into it. I know some people just they don't care and they don't think about it. But for me, that whole decision hung over my head for years. And how I had to go about getting that is I had to go to Planned Parenthood. I had to make an appointment. I had to go to 3 therapy sessions. I also had to go to a civil court for family judge by myself. The father didn't even go into the courtroom. He waited in the car, didn't bother to go into the court case with me. Um, this was my court case was on December 22nd, the day before my 16th birthday. So just again, December 23rd, that's 2 days before Christmas. So this is right before Christmas and the judge was so sweet, the sweetest man. He listened to me, listened to my whole story of me being on drugs and the father not caring. I even told him the father was out in the parking lot right now and he's not even in here supporting me. I was crying and this poor man was just bawling in his seat and looking at me like, I have a granddaughter your age. Like I couldn't imagine. And he's like, and your parents don't know. And I'm like, no, like they can't know. No one can know. This is just please help me. And he did. He signed off on it because in the state of Arizona, in order to get an abortion at the time, you had to have parental consent. You just couldn't be a teenage girl walking into an abortion clinic. You had to have parental consent. The only way around that was with a judge signing off on it, which that's a lot. It's a lot to get that approval. And my best friend at the time, her mom, looking back, I can thank her for the love and the support that she gave me because she was really there for me during all of this. And she was trying to talk me out of it too. She was like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, are you sure? And she's like, why don't you not, like, we can go talk to your mom together. And I'm like, no, like, we can't, I don't want to talk to nobody about this. And I ended up having an abortion on December 26th, 2007, the day after Christmas, 3 days after my 16th birthday. Um,
How has that been for you over the years?
it has been the most painful thing of my life. Every December 26th and every July 11th, when the baby should have been born, I would cry endlessly. I wouldn't talk to people. I didn't want to associate with people. Um, my friends that knew about it, I didn't tell anyone. I had 2 really good friends at the time that knew, and they thought it was okay to tell their friends about what I was going through and what I did. It resulted in my entire high school calling me a baby killer. Um, I immediately got worse into my drug addiction that I hid from my friends and my family. They thought I was just still doing drugs on the weekend. It got to the point I was numbing myself with doing like an 8 ball of cocaine every other day. I was secretly taking amphetamines without anyone's knowledge. I was smoking weed all day long. I was drinking all day long. That is my fault.
It's okay.
But I was trying to numb what I had done. And the part that gets me with it is I hadn't prayed to God in a long time. And the day I had the abortion, they do an ultrasound and you get to see you get to see how far along you were. I could have learning, like I was only about like 4.5 weeks. So I got to see the little itty bitty thing on the screen. And I just remember crying and I remember asking God to take that soul of that baby. Just please take the soul of this baby. Like I'll go to hell. I don't care. I'm committing murder. Like I don't even care about me. Just this thing, because I didn't know male or female, they're innocent. Just take them, please. Like, and I'll stay away from you. I won't come back. Like, because I thought at that moment I was not worth God's love. that was the moment where I was like, okay, God does not love me anymore. I took a child's life. I did what I feel is the most horrible act of taking any child's life in any fashion. And, it started a downward spiral. And then, ironically enough, within a year, I got pregnant again. It's right before 17, got pregnant again.
Same father?
No, different father this time, because I ended up breaking up with that boyfriend, because come to find out, the reason he wanted me to have the abortion is he was dating another girl at the same time who was also pregnant, but he wanted to have the baby with her, not with me. And learning that was just knife in the heart, knife in the womb, literally, of pain, of like how so I had some choice words for them.
Seriously.
And funny enough, I forgive him. I've completely forgiven him, and I still deep down hold love for him, because you know what? You have to, for people. And that's been the biggest healer on that one, is forgiveness of myself. And there's a bigger part of someone else who forgave me on that one, but
Amen.
we'll get to that.
Amen. And thank God. Thank God for that, for sure. So you said that this really took you into more of a downward spiral of your drug use.
Mhm.
So were you like super into that when you got pregnant
The second time, yeah. Oh yeah. The second time I was using drugs every day. I was drinking every day. The minute I found out I was pregnant, I went cold turkey off everything. The only thing I was still doing was smoking cigarettes, which wasn't in my head at that time. I was like, it's not as bad as, doing all the other things. And I just had this deep internal feeling of, okay, you can't do it again. You cannot do it again. And I just knew what that meant. I just knew it meant I cannot have an abortion again, but I don't know what this means. Does this mean, am I going to give this baby up for adoption? Am I going to raise this baby? What's going to happen? So, I'm still in high school. I'm a junior in high school.
Everything's falling apart here today. It's so great.
But yeah, junior year of high school was, I find out I'm pregnant. The entire school finds out again, because same friend group. I should learn, should learn new lessons of sometimes who friends are and who you tell certain things to, because, teenagers, they can't keep secrets.
No.
So it turned into a mockery again of bullying. And, I had kids like walking through the hallway. Oh, you're going to keep this baby too? And it was just, I hated school. I hated everything about it. I didn't want to be there. But I think my 3 teachers, who I love extremely, Miss Penna, Miss Roddy, and oh my goodness, she's going to get mad, Miss Blair. My 3 teachers, Miss Penna was actually pregnant. We were, our sons are actually 3 months apart.
Oh.
But these women saw everything that I was going through and just were, how can we get you to pass junior year? And what can we do to help you after? And to this day, I'm 32, and they're still, I could reach out to them today if I wanted to, and they'd be there for me. Like, I started getting little implants of people that are supposed to be there and help me along the way and show that love that, God always had for me, but I wasn't seeing it as his love.
Right. Right. It's a separation thing, especially when we've made the decision in our hearts that he's not good, right? You had so much happen that you had made that decision that God's not good.
No.
That he's not kind.
No.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's, that God of the Bible is like how I would refer to him, like the Bible God, because then you have Buddhist God, you have Islam God, you have all these other gods, Hindu gods, and I'm like, okay, well, that God, I don't like that God, because he's not good. And it was just a consecutive, well, he keeps letting these bad things happen to me. He keeps letting these bad things happen in my life. And that's definitely not God.
No.
That's definitely living in a fallen world and living with free will, unfortunately, that most people don't realize is not only do we have free will as an individual, other people do too. And what they choose to do with their free will is their choice, whether it be good, bad, hurting people. And in between all of this too, I dealt with other abuse and stuff from relationships and, dating guys who were abusive.
Well, they were probably on drugs too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some, and then I get pregnant. I'm having, and I'm making this life choice of, okay, I'm keeping this baby. I made that choice. My parents were like, are you sure? Like we could go adoption, something like, are you sure you really want to, give up your life to be a mother at 17? And I said, you know what? I took the coward's way out the first time.
So had you told them?
That was when I finally told my mom.
Okay.
My mom found out. I had kept that secret from her for about like 9 months. And then she found out and she was utterly heartbroken. Why didn't you tell me? How could you? I would have never done anything like that. We could have figured something else out. You didn't have to do that. And it definitely crushed my mother because I felt like I couldn't go to her and tell her this. But now, since then, since that incident of like, no, you can tell me anything, I can call my mom right now and pick up the phone and tell her everything that's going on in my life. Like,
She's amazing.
I love her so much. She's definitely a woman of God. And the way she works and the way she thinks and the way she presents herself. And she's always been that way. She's always been so loving and so kind. But the enemy, Satan, comes in and is like, no, your mom's going to actually kick you out. You're going to be homeless with a baby. And I'm like, I don't want to be homeless with a baby. And
No, I don't think that sounds like a good time either.
no, it was, a lot of negative thoughts coming in, a lot of suicidal thoughts. Over the years, I had tried to take my life a few times because I was just so miserable and so down, and I couldn't figure out why. And you go to doctors and they tell you, oh, yeah, you have bipolar disorder, you have, depression, you have anxiety. Let me put you on 37 different medications that are going to cause more depression and anxiety. And
They even have warning labels on them that say may cause suicidal tendencies.
yeah,
I know that.
and then it's supposed to prevent suicidal tendencies. I'm like, where does that work? And
doesn't make sense.
no, you can't make it make sense sometimes. And it was a hard choice. And at 17 and just having an abortion the year prior and everything I had dealt with, I'm like, okay, what am I doing with my life? Where am I going? Who am I going to be? What do I want to do? I always wanted to be a mom. I knew that deep down inside. So I was like, okay, I'm keeping this baby. I'm going to have this baby. I'm going to raise this baby. I'm going to do it. And that was probably one of the hardest decisions of my life because it led to a long road of struggles, of heartbreak, of loss, of just more running from God, more like essentially hating on God and not wanting anything to do with him. So
So even though you didn't want, and this is what you're saying, that you did not want anything to do with God, you actually kind of went searching out for religion, though. You really,
I did.
yeah.
I really
I mean,
did.
you went a lot of places for religion.
I did. I started reading all the old books from my Nana's collection of like her ministry from when she was a minister. And I started reading into Islam. I started reading into Hinduism. And then I got hooked on Buddhism and I fell in love with it because I love the idea of peace, of karma, of enlightenment, and just, like the meditation, like your chakras. Like it was very like at the time I thought healing for me. In reality, I didn't realize how much negative it was actually truly bringing into my life. Because when you set up an entire altar for Buddha and you're praying and asking for good favor, for luck, which there's no luck, um, you start to see, okay, I'm throwing coins down a wishing well and nothing's happening. Nothing's coming back. It's it's all a facade. It's all nothing came of it. Every time I would cry out and say, and I got to the point with when I would pray I would pray to all gods. I just kept Yahweh, God, out of the picture. I never called on him because I'm like, okay, I'm still having this little beef with you.
I'm holding a grudge.
I'm holding a grudge,
With God.
I don't, we're not going to be
Yeah.
friends right now.
Right.
And I'm going
If
to,
you play your cards right, I might.
maybe that's kind of where I was at. I
Yeah.
was, my dad would call me, definitely again, man of God would call me and sorry, Dad. But there would be times he would talk to me about God and Jesus, and we'd be on phone calls, and I would put my phone on mute and set my phone in the kitchen on speaker and wait until he would say, "Are you still there?" And be like, "Oh yeah, Dad, I'm here." And I would walk away from the phone because I didn't want to hear it. I couldn't hear it every time people, he'd be like, "Let's go to church. I want you to hear this or anything." I'm like, I want nothing to do with it. I respect you. I respect all religions and people's views and beliefs. And I was, just like, it's not for me because like I saw it and people were being, hypocritical.
Yeah.
They were being the hypocrites that, Jesus talks about and God talks about that. And I was like, I want none of it. I want none of the hypocrisy. I want nothing to do with it. Every time I was there, like even at church, getting made fun of by church kids, like that didn't make sense to me. I'm like, okay, I'm going to school, I'm getting made fun of. Now I'm coming to the house of God, and these kids don't even like me. Like, I'm like, where do I fit in? Where do I fit into this world? And that was kind of I don't fit in. I don't fit in here. And it was just I guess becoming content with that of like, okay, I'm not welcome anywhere, Someone's got a problem with me. One person doesn't like me for one reason or the other. And I'm just like, okay.
Yeah. Well, other people have bad decision making skills too, right?
Yeah.
So as you were going through this journey and looking and seeking religion, you actually had a lot of loss also in your life. You had some death enter in. Can you share about that?
Yeah. So I ended up me and my son's dad, Coda, when me and his dad split up because I grew up seeing my parents and how upset they were. And I'm like, okay, look, I take marriage as a very strong value. I did not want to marry him. He didn't want to marry me. We knew that. We had our son together and we just realized, okay, we do better as friends. We do better as co-parents. And we've been doing that for the last 10 years. Like we split up when Coda was 4. I started shortly after I went on dates with some people. I hated it. I hate dating. I can't stand it. I just the mundane conversations with people, getting to know someone, I was just miserable. And I was at work one day and I ended up meeting this guy that just seemed super cool. Just super cool dude. He had a Buddha on his desk. I had a Buddha on my desk and we just clicked on it. And I fell in love with this man. And what was really hard for me is one day, one of my friends at work, she's like, "Hey, I found out some information on him. Like, I just need to tell you because I'm concerned." And I was like, "Okay, what's up?" Because she blindsided me after coming out of the bathroom stall. She's like, "Girl, I got to tell you some stuff." And I'm like, "Okay, what is it?" And this is when she tells me she found out that he is a former drug addict. He had a heroin addiction really bad. And he was in recovery. And I was like, "Oh, okay. That's not a big deal." And she looks at me like, "Are you?" And I'm like, "Look, I'm like, I'm a former drug addict. I used to do drugs. I have 2 older brothers who are still, even to this day, active in drug use. I can't judge nobody for it. I can't say that that's makes you less than me. I can't say that that makes you not a good person. I can't say any of that." And that was the internal, what would Jesus do? Jesus would approach it with love and want you to change. And that's always how I went into it, was always love, always. And, you know, I didn't judge him, treated me very well, treated my son very well. I still to this day, I talk to his mom and his dad, but 2 years after dating, he had relapsed one time. And I had told him, "Look, I can't do this. This is not welcome in my home. Like you're going to have to leave if this happens again. Promise me, no, it's not going to happen." Um, on March 28th, 2016, I woke up getting ready for work. and I found him unconscious in the bed next to me. He had overdosed because the heroin that he had purchased that time was laced with fentanyl.
Mm.
I was rolling him on his side. He was having foam out of his mouth, shallow breathing. I called his mom. I called 911. His mom got there before the ambulance did, and we were trying to resuscitate him. I had to lock my son in his room so he didn't see what was happening. His dad lived right down the street at the time. His dad was there in a second and was like, "What's happening?" Like, and I was in the hospital with him for 7 days. He was completely brain dead. Um, and he ended up at some point in the middle of the night had gone outside, gone into our car, smoked, and then came back in. And then because again, that's when it was like the peak of fentanyl was becoming a big problem. And he had no idea, and it cost him his life. The doctors tried everything. Um, I would lay in bed with him. I would talk to him. And his heart rate would change. So I knew there was something left. But even in that moment, I still didn't call out to God.
Mm.
I didn't call on him because it was like, this is your fault. Like, you're not going to show up. You didn't show up for me any of the other times in my life, when I was being abused, when I was like hurt, when I was trying to take my life. You didn't show up. You're not going to show up for this. So I didn't call on him. And that started another kind of downward spiral.